super excited to introduce two of the most interesting people that I know. So Jan Stoica and Aaron Schildkrout. Aaron led growth at Uber through some of the fastest growth that Uber experienced. He's a founding investor at Addition and has been instrumental in helping us build Anyscale, both as an early investor as well as on a day-to-day basis. So please join me in welcoming Aaron. And I also want to introduce Jan Stoica. So Jan is a professor at Berkeley. He's one of my co-founders here at Anyscale, as well as a co-founder and the first CEO of Databricks, and as well as other companies, and one of the creators of a number of foundational open source technologies, from Spark to Ray to VLLM, as well as the chatbot arena and many other things. So please welcome Jan. Thank you. All right. So I want to start by asking both of you, and Jan, you run one of the most productive research groups in the world. What are the bottlenecks in research? What are the hard parts about research, and how will AI play a role here?
I think the answer is pretty easy now, is a lack of infrastructure resources. If you look at different workloads today in AI, you have everything from pre-training, post-training, and inference. Now, in pre-training in particular, as you know, to train these kind of large models, you require a lot of resources. So academia in general does not have, unfortunately, this kind of resources. And therefore, many of the innovations there are coming from industry. Like attention is what you need, and chain of thoughts and things like that. Now, if you look at the other extreme, inference, for inference, you don't need as many resources to serve this kind of models. And as you probably know, a lot of innovations is coming from academia there. You have the most successful, the most popular, let's not say successful, open source inference engines for large language models coming from our labs, like VLLM and also HGLang. And not only that, but techniques like flash attention, page attention, spec infer, and many others are coming from academia. The post-training is in the middle, so we'll see. But fundamentally, the short answer to Robert's question, it's infrastructure.
Yeah, and Aaron, you've helped grow a number of important businesses. What do you see as the role of AI or the challenges to really scaling and productionizing AI in businesses?
Well, listening today, everybody created these beautiful slides, and it seemed like, no problem. But I think it looks like a lot of practitioners in the room, like people just know that actually scaling AI at companies is incredibly painful and involves a gigantic, constant mess, and both political mess, often data infrastructure mess, metadata mess, tooling mess, multi-team mess, entropy mess, over-eagerness mess, and money mess. Like, let's get the AI slide for the earnings call mess. Like, the mess is enormous. The mess was there for anybody who was around for the BI era. Like, the same mess was there. Like, I managed, Vertica clusters at Uber that fell down every Monday for like 9 hours. Here we are again, just repeating the mess. So I think anybody who's a real practitioner knows that to get a truly powerful data system up, working, empowering all the engineers across an entire company is just a huge Herculean task. And I imagine almost everybody here is kind of midstream on that, and it will continue for many years. So I think that is universal. Yeah.
Where should people start?
Anyscale? No, where should people start? So I think the data is the key, and I think especially as we move towards a certainly fine-tuning, but also post-training world, and people start to use AI, particularly like real agentic systems, which really haven't started yet, in production use cases that are high risk with lots of money or human life or whatever sort of essential human element around it. Like the importance of high value expert key data in great fidelity is going to become incredibly important. Like my view is that increasingly particularly for LLMs, but just for AI in general, evaluation and testing and understanding accuracy is going to end up being the primary task, actually, as the models become unbelievable and more commodified. And so getting your data into an amazing place, particularly the proprietary data that lets your AI be an advantage and not just the same thing that every other hedge fund has or whatever, I think that is by far the biggest issue. And increasingly, as you've pointed out often, Robert, AI will be the primary tool used for the development of your own data. So data processing will become the primary AI data workload or the first AI data workload in a lot of ways. Yeah. So yeah, that's the territory I think that everybody needs to really start as building the fundamental infrastructure to manage your own data, which will be your core advantage.
I'm curious, for both of you, since you mentioned evals as one of the main tasks, do you see evals as something that can be factored out as a product or as something that can be solved once and for all? Or is this an area that each company needs to go deep in its own domain and really solve evals in a really custom way?
Jan and I are competing on evals, actually. He doesn't quite know that yet, but it's coming soon. So, go ahead.
So taking a step back and piggybacking on what Aaron said, and probably, hopefully, resonates with many of you here, one of the main challenges in making AI work in an enterprise setting is actually the reliability. Can you trust the answers, right? Especially when people say that to build products which can act without human oversight, right? And the truth is now that most of the successful AI products, they have a human in the loop, right? You think about things like Cursor, like coding, agents coding, and customer support and things like that. They have a human in the loop. And the role of the human in the loop is actually to validate the answers or the solution which are proposed by these large language models. So now, it's in some sense, it's like, we had this problem before also in software, right? Building reliable software, right? This is what we are doing, right? And this is what we spend most of the time, not writing the initial code for the program to do something. It's actually to do it reliably. And for there, we invented, unit tests and end-to-end testing, integration testing, CI/CD, and so forth. So there is no reason not to follow the same kind of path or a similar path, not the same path, in the case of AI. And now the question is about how are this kind of evaluation. I think that there will be evaluation which are kind of to be category based on the category, where a large language model is going to work well and what you are going to use. There will be different trade-offs between performance and accuracy. And there will be also eventually for your own application, right? Like we have CI/CD or we have unit tests for each application. And yeah, it's here. We, as you probably know, at Berkeley, we've done this chatbot arena, which we have real people asking real questions and then getting the answer for large language models to these questions. And people can also say which one is better. So you can get this kind of also both a human preference on the real question and answer from these large language models to better understand how this large language model perform. I think we are still at the very beginning, but I think it will be a more and more important problem, especially as more and more of these applications, AI-based applications, are brought to production.
Yeah, I really think the conversation is going to move aggressively to eval over the next year and a half or something. And I think using LLMs to do evaluation on LLMs is going to become just like obviously circular and problematic for the long set of edge cases, especially in complicated agentic systems where models are interacting with models and things get really black boxy and weird. And the software patterns around CI/CD and like all that world will not really apply because AI is just a fundamentally different kind of programming paradigm. And so new methods for evaluation and really figuring out what data is needed for evaluation before going to production with high-risk use cases are going to be essential. I think that is going to be a primary edge that unlocks AI for some companies and that others fail at. And I think there'll be big businesses built there. I don't think it's just a tack on.
Yeah.
And by the way, there are also a lot of more facets. Like for instance, even simple things like you build your product based on the AI using some particular model. But the models evolve very fast, and then you want to swap them because you want to reduce the cost. Maybe you want to increase the accuracy. Now, what will be the impact on your product when you do the swap with another language model? It's not trivial to answer that question at all.
Yeah.
I think from our own experience at Anyscale, we've seen some of this where as we've started to use more and more AI tools, a lot of the job becomes looking at the output of these AI tools and saying, hey, that's good, like that's bad, like redo that part, you know, and
even coding, like I think it will not be long until people are, you know, the average pull request submission is like, you know, 1,000 lines of code or something because it's all written by Claude. Well, what do you do with 1,000 lines? You know, that's an insane pull request. What do you do? And so eval, even in that kind of setting, is going to become more and more important. Just an entirely new paradigm of managing software development is coming, and now.
Yeah. We saw this early on with trying to build Ray as an open source project, where some of the early contributions would show up and out of the blue, and it's 10,000 lines of code, and it's you know, you have to like take a step back, kind of collaborate on the design doc, and really understand things.
And one last thing I will touch again to just show, you know, I illustrate the magnitude of the problem. Think about, again, developing software, right? It's like the rule of thumb is that it's only, you know, if you're developing software which eventually is making into production, it's only 10% or less of the initial effort of building the feature, right? And releasing the feature. The 90% is about maintenance, feature improving, bug fixes, and things like that. Now, that's software where it's pretty open box, right? You can see every instruction, what it's doing, you can debug, you can insert. There is a minimum printfs after each line to see what happens. Now, if you go to large language models, there are also more black box. And I think that this kind of things about making sure that the thing you build on top of AI is really working is probably going to be even more effort in terms relative.
So how, since we're talking about software engineering, how is this going to play out over time? I know that's the current state today. You know, you need a human in the loop, but are we going to have are we going to have a bunch of AI agents that follow the normal software engineering practices, submitting pull requests, doing code reviews?
I mean, a few things, I think. If you were in college trying to become a computer scientist, I think you should probably change trajectories. No judgment, but it just seems like a bad idea. Yeah, I think AI will write the vast majority of code, eval, et cetera. All this stuff we just talked about will become absolutely primary. New software language will emerge that is designed to work better with AIs than the current set. Many agents will be simultaneously acting in order to build code bases, but I don't think it's like, oh, software engineering's done. I think, you know, I was on a panel the other day with I think the CTO or head of engineering at Instacart, and we were saying, you know, Instacart couldn't have been built, you know, whatever it is, 17 years ago or something. Well, the next high fidelity software application that's sort of hard to imagine right now, but like will exist, will be able to be built. You know, maybe it's like the perfect modeling of future weather across like every square millimeter of like the Earth's atmosphere or something like that. But you know, we will, I believe, progress dramatically in terms of what we can do. But my sense is it's going to be very senior sort of strategist, architecture type human beings who are overseeing AIs who are doing all of the actual work in a very complicated system that is going to be a little bit mind-bending and not good for college grads.
Yeah. So actually, I'm not sure that the evolution will be so linear. I think that from 0 to 1 definitely will be much faster, but from 1 to whatever 10 or 100 is going probably could be slower. And it's the same thing. It's about the difference between doing the V0 of the product and then evolving the product over time, right? So that's kind of one thing. And evolving product over time could prove even more difficult than today, because you have to deal with something which is eventually, it's a little bit more black box than today, because it's written by these agents, and you may not necessarily, understand the code as easily. Let me give you, just giving you an example here is that I was intrigued about this. If you have to look at a code, at a few lines of code, and you know that kind of programming languages and so forth, it's actually easier to say, oh, these lines of code looks good, than to write them. And actually, that's one of the biggest successes of this kind of copilots, right? Because it proposes you a bunch of lines of a bunch of code, basically Uber autocomplete, and we say, good, this is look good, this is not looking good, right? So that's kind of thing. But as the code complexity increases, there is some threshold at which is actually, I believe, although I have not done any studies here, but it's intuitively that it is easier to build it from scratch than understanding a code. And my anecdotal evidence here, I have so many cases, which engineers, they are thrown into a kind of big code base and so forth, and they say, hey, can I do it from scratch, right, in order to change this code, right, which I don't understand. So I think that's kind of a dichotomy. The other thing is that, by this token, if the vision you mentioned is going to become a reality, the product managers are going to become much more important.
That's me.
I know that, right? It's like, because,
That's why I said like strategist. It's like technical strategist.
It's because you need to say what that thing is going to do. But then you need to be very tight, right? Because it's you write a PRD, you give to the engineer, and the engineer will come back and ask you, okay, what I should do here or do here, because it's very hard to write to be absolutely unambiguous, right, the PRD. But now what will happen? Right? So you need to be kind of very precise. One area in which the agents can be very successful, but it's kind of a niche where you can have formal specifications, right? You can do formal specifications. And then if you have formal specifications, the agents can write the code, but also provide the proof that the code satisfies the specification. Now, how many of you use formal specification here? Not many, right? Because writing the specification in itself, it's as hard probably as writing the program. So writing a PRD by the same token, which is absolutely with no ambiguity, it will be almost as hard as writing the program.
I think the AI will need to ask a lot of clarifying questions.
Totally.
In the absence of formal specification.
It needs to realize what doesn't know, right? That's the question.
So how's the user experience around AI going to evolve? Are we going to have virtual AI coworkers? What does this look like?
Yeah, I think that the way is still probably the best way to think about, at least today, is like assistants, right? We are calling them assistants, right? And this is what they are doing there. But assistant means that an assistant will be only as good and going back as the instruction you can give to that. If you have a human assistant, right? If you mentor someone, right? If you have someone is working for you, right? How you make that person productive, right? Being clear about the instructions, telling what the success look like, and actually being able to check whether that person has done the job, right? Now, replace that person with kind of AI is the same kind of interaction, and it has to apply, right? So that's why I think that, and in general, you see that, there is a theory that people who are the experts in their fields, they are going to get even more advantage using these tools and assistants, right? Because they are going to be better in specifying what the task should be, and they are going to be better also to validate whether the task has been accomplished. And if not, presumably they are also going to be better to add more specification and clarification so that this AI assistant will do a better job.
I think so ChatGPT, it's sort of obvious that chat is the right sort of like main interface, but I don't think that was obvious before that happened. And that's like a fundamental UX kind of decision and experience. With the rise of mobile, got the vast majority of human beings communicating with images and video vastly more than they were before. AI doesn't like speak English or a language per se. It's like math fundamentally, right? And so I think it's a little bit hard to quite know what the interface is through which humans would get the most out of AI. Because it just happens to be right now that the primary communication method is like language. But image, charts, other forms of data, video, like forms we can't quite yet imagine what they'll look like. I think we might see like more radical innovation around user experience and design than we're expecting over time. That would allow us to learn more from and gain more from AI, but in ways that like are really quite hard to imagine. I mean, if you extend, forward, call it, and it's not that many years, by the way, 35, you could completely imagine like, information manifesting neurally, for instance, low-grade information. That is a path. And so I think we might be surprised about the user experiences over time. Yeah. And then on the enterprise, obviously, I think the vast majority of the use cases are going to be very back office, and it sort of doesn't matter what it looks like, but what matters is the like radical productivity and intelligence that's brought to existing tasks.
Yeah, I think one interesting, based on what you guys are saying, one exciting consequence of us all using AI tools very heavily is that we're all going to learn to become really good managers and really clear communicators. So I want to, both of you have thought about...
That will be hard.
Both of you have thought a bit, at least, about policy around AI and open source and other areas. So I'm curious, do you expect the US to maintain a long-term lead in AI relative to China?
I know you have strong and good opinions here, please.
Or what will it take? What are the options?
I think that if nothing changes in the current policy in the US, I think that the open source models coming from China will match the best models in the US. And I'm not talking here about the open source models because they are already ahead. I'm talking about proprietary models. And to understand why, it's just think about what do you need in order to develop these models. So you need data, you need people, and you need infrastructure, right? This is what you need. And I think that here, if you look at China, in terms of data, they do have data. And they have also more people. They don't have the same kind of privacy concerns like here. They have people. Make no mistakes. They have probably more AI researchers today than US in terms of the sheer number. Not only that, but as I will say, it's basically they are working much more together than the diffusion of innovation in China today is higher than the US. I'll say more about that. The only thing that the disadvantage they have is about chip the infrastructure, right? That you have export controls. But they are making progress, and there are new announcement from Huawei and so forth. So that's kind of the thing. So US is like, what the problem in the US is that the development, when you talk about people, yeah, a lot of them are people, but the development right now happens in silos, right? It's very secretive. You basically have each big lab developing their own models, which more or less are pretty similar these days, right? So that's number one. You have then academia, which is, I mentioned, at least for developing models, is not part of the equation, right? The collaboration between academia and these kind of labs is very precarious, right? Because the secrecy on these labs side. So basically you have all these people but cannot collaborate, so you cannot make quick progress, right? And arguably the only diffusion of innovation happening today in the US is by people moving from one company to another, which, you know, in a state like California, you have no problems to do that, and start starting new companies, right? So that's kind of, you know, one sense. While in China, for political or whatever, I'm not going to say what, I don't want to speculate. It's a lot of models are open weights, and the collaboration between academia and these labs is much more intense. Maybe this is because they are behind, and these labs like ByteDance and so forth, they felt they need help to make faster progress. So that's kind of the situation today. So if you think about going from the first principle, how you can change that, you need all your people, the smartest people, to work together, because only that you are going to accelerate the progress. In order to work together, you need to have shared artifacts, how you can work together otherwise, which means the shared artifacts at the software level is kind of open source, and you need also some shared infrastructure. But right now, if you don't change that, and if you look at the trends, right, clearly that the model coming out from China makes huge strides the last year, the last 12 months. And now you take a step back, why wouldn't this trend continue if nothing changes?
I mean, go ahead, or part of, yeah. Yeah, just to piggyback, I would say talent. You know, I think the US is at a real crossroads in terms of attraction versus detraction around talent, and shifting gears so that we are by far the biggest talent magnet in the world, which we have been for a long time, is absolutely essential. You have public investment in the infrastructure and making sure that it's available broadly and widely and very deep, 20, 30-year kind of investments, not only in chips, but also in the energy infrastructure, cooling infrastructure, and so on, like the entire stack that's required for AI dominance. I think soft power globally and really forming deep relationships with key countries around the world around AI strategy, norms, ethics, safety, security, infrastructure, the technical stack, talent sharing, et cetera. Right now we're increasingly isolated, which I think has some risks. Thinking very deeply about exports and imports and really long game strategic around that. Open source, I totally agree with Jan. I think it's the ground for shared collaborative work that has kind of mutual incentives across especially large enterprises where AI isn't the only thing they do, but it's a piece of what they do, where a lot of the greatest minds in the country are sitting. Public, private, university, triadic kind of collaboration, which is degraded in a lot of ways. Just a full-on, wholehearted effort to ensure that we are the leaders with other countries around the world over the next 10, 15 years. Right now, China, I think by the end of the decade, will control something like 50% of global manufacturing, leaders in so many different categories, and that's growing. We cannot sleep on that if we want to, feel good about the future of the United States on the world platform. So this feels extremely important.
And it's completely. I encourage everyone to just look at the facts, right? We can hypothesize and so forth, but look at the facts, right? Today, most of the research community, United States or outside, virtually everyone, it's using open source Chinese models. This is different from 12 months ago, they were using Llama. Why? Because they are best models, and you want to publish papers, you publish research. You have to use the best that is out there, because otherwise you don't get numbers, good numbers, right? If you don't get good numbers, your paper will not be published. But look about, and I think there is a little bit of arrogance on our side here in the US about, okay, we are going to, because we are US, we are going to win. But look what happened with solar cells.
Electric cars.
Electric cars, electric batteries, robotic drones, right? Drones, robots, right? Robotic in the industry, right? Which is pretty much right now dominated by China. So, that's where we are.
One more question on this topic. How obvious is it that a lead in AI translates to a lead in a major edge in defense?
Extremely obvious.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Do you want to elaborate on that, or just like?
I mean, I think data advantage in warfare incredibly important. Increasing autonomy, pretty much the entire defense stack will be autonomous. The key role of space in collecting data and defending, the entire warfare ecosystem, tactics even, the invention of new tactics, radically detailed, high fidelity simulation, training, the entire defense ecosystem will be rebuilt over the next 15 years to be AI powered and data driven. And if we don't have an edge, then we have a radical risk. And again, I think soft power is hugely important. This is about global collaboration, and less than it's about a pure national interest. And if we sleep on it, we won't be happy.
Okay. Maybe one last question to end on a slightly different note. Where do you think we'll be surprised over the coming years?
Oh, I have a few.
Go for it.
Okay, I think we'll see, I was thinking about this in preparing, just like noodling. I was like, okay, I think we're gonna see like a true AI celebrity in the next 18 months. Like true AI celebrity, like.
Not a real person.
Rihanna, but an AI, Do you want to trade back and forth? Because I got a list, it's gonna be annoying.
Yeah, I definitely see the appeal of that, right? You don't have to work with real people who have.
But throwing concerts, fully acting autonomously, picking fights online with Kelsey, whatever, like the full deal, like a celebrity, but can also call all of you at the same time on the phone and have a personal chat with you, right? Like, it's coming. I don't know if 18 months is right, but like soon, like a full celebrity. And then once there's one, there's probably more than one, because that's what happens with celebrities. Like, you need somebody to celebrity with. Jan, that's my contribution. I have more, but go ahead.
Do you think that, how do you think that will work? Because people will not relate to that.
What did you say?
It's one of the appeal of a celebrity is that people relate to.
Well, how do you know, do you relate to Taylor Swift?
So that's not relatable. Right, so there is no aspiration.
Did you see the recent thing where the AIs came onto Reddit and convinced people radically more effectively than humans of their opinions? Radically, it was 5x or 8x, I forgot, don't quote me. I just think, another prediction is that I think, if not in the next midterm election, at the next presidential election, the AIs will be so much better at texting and calling people to convince them of political positions that goodbye, staffers, and by the way, if you feel strongly about your political position and it's the same as mine, please go build this. The AI will convince some random voter in Wisconsin of whatever position through an extended text chat that's personal, that's based on all their collectible data, that they're having at the same time with every other Wisconsin person on election night.
That person will also have an AI assistant reading all their texts and fact-checking everything and providing additional context.
Maybe, actually probably not, which is scary. That would be benefit, then it'd be an even match.
That would only be done AIs, right?
I think this level of like disruption, again, it's like we can debate, is it 18 months, is it 3 years, or is it 12 years? But 12 years is like 0 years, in the frame of reality. So like, I think we're in for a lot, and we are wildly unprepared, and I'm not sure we trust all the people who are building the AI, and certainly not the hands in which it is, and I really think that, get ready, because we're not.
So I think, as a prediction, I think that, unless we solve the problem we mentioned earlier, reliability, you are not going to see such a rapid progress like people imagine. I read recently, it was this kind of very nice analogy with the sound barrier, right? You have sound barrier, which is it's difficult to go over. And to that token, we are going to see very rapid progress, which already happened today, in the domains for which it's easy to validate the answers. That's why you see when you talk about reasoning models today, which are, the new hot kind of models, where are they good, right? What do they do? Is problem solving, coding, right? Because you can test, right? So I think that, you are, and this is also like the society, how evolved historically. Which are the disciplines which evolve very fast, right? Science disciplines, right? It's like, you think about everything from chemistry, physics, and so forth. They do, and engineering in general, they evolve very fast because you can build things, artifacts, you can say something about that, what they do. Then you can compose them, you can, in bigger and bigger and complex systems, right? Right? If you think about where we are like 200 years ago and today in this kind of science, it's a huge difference. Now think about another domain where you don't have the easy way to validate the answer, like literature, right? If you compare most of the books today with 200 years ago, it's not a huge difference. Actually, some people will argue the other way around. So that's kind of what I think. So it will be a very disproportionate kind of advancements depending on the domain. And that will be related to whether you can have the ability to validate the answers or not.
Guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate the insights. This is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Please join me in thanking them.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you, Jan.